You were at the courthouse as this dramatic day played out. What did you make of Trump's demeanor?
Well, this is a man who is used to hearing the big band play "Hail to the Chief" and walk in the room with everyone standing. And, this was something that Donald Trump never experienced in his life. He had to stand in front of the judge. He had to, sit there in silence and listen. This was clearly a humiliating experience for him. You could see it etched on his face. He was angry to some degree, stone cold appearance. But he, for the most part, behaved and followed the judge's instructions.
Yes, and we'll talk about that later. He followed them in the court, not that much later at Mar-A-Lago. But let's look at these 34 charges that were laid.
Yeah.
In your opinion, was enough revealed today about the strength of the prosecution case? Well,
the district attorney here, Alvin Bragg, is really in, what's been referred to as untested waters. While he's brought these 34 counts against Donald Trump for hiding, a cover-up to hide scandalous information from the public before the election. This is really in uncharted waters here because these are traditionally misdemeanor charges here in the U.S., and he has ramped up these charges to felonies. And by doing so, he is going to be testing a New York election law that is extremely rare, trying to show that these counts actually conceal another crime. And this would be lying about, falsifying business records and then lying to tax authorities. So this is, a slippery slope that he's facing here, and only time will tell whether, a judge, if in fact Trump's side, ramps this up, if some of these charges may, be dismissed or knocked back down to misdemeanors, which would, of course, result in a fine and, a possible very limited, jail sentence.
Yeah. So then let's look at the timeline. What happens next? Because, of course, there's going to be a ramping up of the sort of political dynamic in terms of selecting the Republican candidate.
Yes. The timetable on this, and again, there's other cases at play here in Washington and Georgia and New York that may take up Donald Trump's time. But all this is going to fall into the heart of the Republican primaries here in the U.S. The judge has set a December date in which Donald Trump has to return to New York and appear back in court. The prosecutors want this case to be tried if it goes that far into January of 2024. Donald Trump's defense team, however, is saying that's too soon, and they would prefer it to be in the spring of 2024. Regardless of that, Donald Trump is going to be in the middle of a, basically, his reelection for president. So, it's certainly not going to be an opportune time to have, the Stormy Daniels hush money case, front and center.
No. And to your point, there are other potentially far more serious legal issues that he is facing around holding on to classified documents and, of course, the storming of the January 6th storming of the Capitol. How far off may charges potentially be in those cases?
Well, we just received a bombshell the other day on the news that the Washington Post unearthed over the fact that prosecutors are alleging in the classified documents case that after Trump received the subpoena, he allegedly went through the files himself, picking out and selecting various documents that he wanted to keep. All of this weighs into obstruction charges. And so that case in Washington is extremely serious. It's much more serious than the case here that was presented in court yesterday by the district attorney.
Yeah. You talked about Trump behaving himself largely within the New York courtroom. But once he was back at Mar-A-Lago, and in fact the judge warned him against dangerous rhetoric before he headed off. He didn't heed that warning, did he, in front of a loyal crowd at Mar-A-Lago?
No, not at all. In fact, the judge had admonished him in court based on comments that Trump made on social media, saying that bringing him into court was going to, lead to death and, destruction. The judge specifically said, warned Donald Trump against inciting violence in this particular case. Trump didn't do that, but back at Mar-a-Lago in front of his 400 supporters that were gathered there in the ballroom, he went off on the judge. He said he's a Trump-hating judge with a Trump-hating wife and family. He once again attacked the district attorney as a criminal. Donald Trump had previously said, referred to the man as an animal. So, it's extremely, extremely heated. And Donald Trump obviously vented the whole way back on his flight back to Florida. And when he got back to Mar-a-Lago, he was seething.
Yes, he was. And, again, also, Barry, he was back in prime time, which he hasn't really been occupying for some time now.
Oh, listen, I mean, I was there at the courthouse yesterday. We had, I met reporters, from all over the world. There were hundreds of journalists there and TV people. So it was quite a spectacle.
Barry, great to talk again, and we will no doubt keep in touch as this plays out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.